July painted a sobering picture. Money was flowing into the Treasury, yes, but the outflow was even more aggressive. The outcome? A jaw-dropping $291 billion shortfall. Many had hoped that rising tariffs would bridge the gap, but reality had other plans. Why didn't this work? The answer isn't hidden in the raw numbers themselves, but in the tug-of-war between income and spending. Let's break down the official figures before diving deeper. In just 1 month, July recorded a deficit of $291 billion. That's a staggering figure, sure, but the real story isn't the size of the number, it's the context. Even as tariff revenue climbed, it wasn't enough to balance the books. Here's the emotional twist. Revenue did increase, which should feel like progress. Yet spending surged even more fiercely, particularly the cost of interest on debt, which now plays a starring role in the budget drama. We don't need to drown in technical jargon. Think of the national budget like a household budget. You earn money, you spend money, and you pay interest on what you owe. The mechanics are the same, just magnified. The government collects taxes, tariffs add extra cash to the pot. But if spending races ahead, especially with rising interest payments, even a big boost in income can't prevent a shortfall. This is exactly what unfolded in July. Step by step, let's explore. What does a monthly deficit really mean? Why did it spike so high that month? Why didn't tariffs save the day? Why has interest taken center stage? And most importantly, how does all this ripple into your wallet, the prices you pay, and the business world? We'll explain each piece clearly without the confusing numbers game. We'll also be asking you questions along the way, because this isn't just abstract math, it's about everyday life. And if you subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll be part of this conversation, helping us continue to untangle these seemingly complicated topics in plain language. A $291 billion deficit in July basically means the government didn't earn enough to cover its bills that month. So why so high? Seasonal patterns play a role. Tax deadlines, allocation schedules, and timing of large payments all create these monthly swings. But the broader trend is more pressing. For months now, there's been a growing tension. Revenue is up, but spending is climbing even faster. And yes, tariffs contributed a healthy chunk of income in July, but it still wasn't enough to tip the scales. If the deficit keeps growing even with tariff revenue, it's a clear signal. Spending is accelerating faster than income. One particularly heavy hitter? Interest payments. When the national debt is already huge, even a tiny uptick in interest rates can dramatically swell the monthly burden. July's story, in short, tariffs chipped in, but interest and other obligations sprinted ahead. So why all the chatter about tariffs? Politicians love to frame them as a kind of magic money machine, self-financing revenue that can protect local producers and fill the treasury. On paper, it sounds smart, almost too good to be true. But reality bites in two ways. First, the revenue generated is often tiny compared to the overall budget. Second, passing the tax on to consumers drives prices up, putting pressure on families and households. The ripple effects eventually loop back into the economy in unexpected ways. Yes, tariff revenues climbed in July, no one disputes that. But the budget is far more than a single line item. Healthcare, pensions, defense, education, infrastructure, disaster response, social programs, state transfers, the list goes on. And then there's the big one. Interest on the debt. This is where scale matters. Tariffs are increasing, but total spending is rising even faster. A simple analogy, imagine your income goes up by $100 in a month, but your rent jumps by $200. That new income feels nice, but the net result is still negative. The same principle applies to the state budget. Tariffs add cash, but if interest and mandatory expenses grow twice as fast, the deficit widens. Some might ask, why not raise tariffs even higher? It's a tempting idea, but it's not straightforward. Higher tariffs can shrink imports, which means lower tax revenue. And when businesses pass the extra cost on to consumers, people end up paying more. If demand drops, the tax base narrows. In short, higher rates don't always translate into higher revenue. Politics, as always, revolves around finding the delicate balance. The most eye-catching trend recently, the soaring interest expenses. In past years, the government financed spending and revenue gaps by borrowing more, inflating the total debt. As older debt matures, new borrowing is done at current interest rates. When interest rates stay high, budgets get repriced, meaning the government ends up paying more interest every month, adding yet another layer of strain. There's no need to drown in technical jargon. The simple truth is this: interest payments are ballooning. When these payments rise faster than tariff revenues, the extra cash from tariffs barely makes a dent. July illustrated this perfectly. Could a drop in interest rates help? Somewhat, but the relief would be gradual. With the debt already so high, any decrease spreads its effect over months, not hours. In other words, there's no magic button. Cutting rates today won't instantly lighten the financial load tomorrow. Past borrowing, debt maturity schedules, and market demand all shape the outcome. Another critical factor is economic growth. When the economy expands quickly, revenues grow, tax collection improves, and the budget breathes. When growth slows, so does the inflow. This is an essential context when looking at July's numbers. Tariffs rose, but other revenue channels couldn't keep pace. At the same time, some spending grows automatically. Healthcare costs rise, population-related expenditures climb. These items march to their own rhythm, independent of economic ups and downs. Which raises a natural question: would raising taxes solve the problem? On paper, perhaps. In practice, when the economy is slowing, higher taxes can further suppress demand. And politically, it's an unpopular, difficult choice. That's why debates usually focus on three areas: spending discipline, the tax base, and foreign trade policy. None alone can work miracles. Each comes with trade-offs, and policymakers must weigh these carefully. For most people, budget deficits feel distant, abstract. The government is big, right? It will handle it. But here's the reality. When the government borrows at high rates, it sets benchmarks for the financial system. Everything from credit cards to car loans, mortgages, and commercial loans is influenced. When rates stay high, middle-class financing costs climb, hitting households directly. Then there's the price effect. Tariffs push up the cost of imported goods, and some of that increase lands squarely in consumer wallets. Electronics, appliances, cars, even certain foods. You can see the impact across categories. While factors like competition, exchange rates, and logistics affect the degree, the general trend is unmistakable. Tariffs impose an indirect burden.
Domestic producers may breathe easier in some sectors, but if the cost of inputs like machinery or intermediate goods rises, production costs also climb. The result? Even domestic prices can creep up. Businesses feel the pressure too. Rising uncertainty about interest rates, tariffs, or taxes leads companies to postpone investments. Slower investment drags growth, which in turn affects budget revenues. Predictability is crucial to avoid a vicious cycle. Social media discussions reflect this tension. One-sentence summaries, flashy visuals, short videos, they spread quickly. Tariffs are helping, the deficit is closing, or tariffs aren't enough. The reality, however, is more nuanced. The budget is a multi-channel system. Tariffs contribute, yes, but they can't solve the deficit alone. The takeaway? Balance matters. For viewers, a single sentence might be catchy, but for decision makers, oversimplification is risky. The healthy approach is to ask three key questions. Are revenue channels growing? Is spending under control? Is the interest burden easing? Until we consider all three together, forming an opinion is premature. Spending discipline, broadening the tax base, adjusting tariffs and standards in foreign trade. These are the three levers policymakers often talk about. If only it were that simple. Each comes with costs, political constraints, and timelines that can stretch from months to years. Take spending discipline. In the short term, it can be effective, but where do you cut? touch mandatory items like pensions, healthcare, or education, and you need broad social consensus. Efficiency reforms help, but the results appear only in the medium term. There's no magic switch. Cut today, relax tomorrow just doesn't work. Expanding the tax base isn't about raising rates, it's about making the system more inclusive. Reviewing exemptions, simplifying the tax code, and reducing the size of the informal economy can generate meaningful revenue. Politically, these steps are often more acceptable, but their impact trickles in slowly, over many years. Foreign trade measures are also tricky. Tariffs can shield sectors and bring in revenue, but overdo them and imports shrink, prices climb, and some domestic production lines become more expensive. A smarter approach may involve targeted protections through standards and regulations, which reduce uncertainty for investors. Lower uncertainty can shrink the risk premium, allowing the Treasury to borrow at lower interest rates, directly easing the deficit. Which lever is the right one? There's no single answer. Balance is crucial. July's data makes one thing clear. Tariffs alone cannot erase a large deficit. Without curbing the interest burden and slowing the pace of spending growth, sustainable improvement is nearly impossible. If interest rates gradually fall over several quarters, the cost of rolling over debt eases, monthly interest payments slow, and the Treasury gains some breathing room. But it takes time. Pushing tariffs higher may temporarily boost revenue, yet falling imports will eventually weaken that stream. Prices rise, consumer demand softens, and the tax base may shrink. Reducing spending growth permanently could rapidly improve the deficit, but it comes with social and political costs. Consensus is needed where and how to cut. The healthiest outcome happens when all three levers, spending discipline, tax base expansion, and trade policy, work together in harmony. Even then, fluctuations remain. Demand in Treasury bond auctions may swing, yields can become volatile, and highly indebted, capital-intensive industries may feel particular pressure. Banks may keep credit standards tight for some time. In the stock market, companies with low debt and a domestic focus may weather the storm better. This isn't investment advice, it's simply a reading of the landscape. The path of the dollar, global risk appetite, and unexpected external shocks all matter. That's why it's risky to make sweeping claims based on a single month's data. July's figures are a reminder of the broader trend. Rising revenue alone isn't enough. The real determinants of the deficit are spending and the interest burden. Without tariffs, the shortfall probably would have been even larger. Tariffs do contribute to the Treasury, yes, but they're far from a silver bullet. Will lower interest rates solve everything? Some pressure eases, yes, but with high debt, the relief spreads slowly over time. And if spending continues to rise, even falling interest rates won't offer a lasting solution. Could raising taxes quickly fix the problem? Short-term revenue might increase, but in a weak growth environment, it can backfire. More sustainable strategies focus on expanding the tax base, simplifying the system, and reducing the informal economy. The takeaway this month is clear. Revenue may be growing, but if spending, especially interest payments, grows faster, the deficit will expand. Saying tariffs fill the coffers is true. Saying tariffs close the deficit is generally false. Understanding this difference clarifies the debate. Budget deficits aren't new, but the quality of governance and predictability makes all the difference. Clear rules, a transparent roadmap, and measured choices calm markets, ease interest rate pressures, and create healthier growth. When these foundations are in place, tariffs, taxes, and spending discipline can work together effectively. Where should the process start? Reviewing tariff rates? Broadening the tax base? Slowing spending growth? Doing all three at once is tough, but picking a starting point is essential. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation respectful, data-driven, and rational.
The $2.91 billion deficit in July is more than just a number. It's a warning. We need to discuss economic growth, debt costs, and the realities of everyday life all at once. In this video, we kept the technical language simple so everyone can understand. If you found it helpful, like the video and subscribe. We'll continue breaking down complex topics with the same clarity in future content.